Good morning. So I watched for a second time a video that I hadn't noticed where Dr. George Antonios from Counsel and Might, he's a dispensationalist, Baptist teacher in Montreal, who I appreciate a lot and like a lot of the way he operates and teaches and insights he's offered, which I find helpful. Yeah, I listened to where he was critiquing somebody I thought has made some good points. This Hebrew scholar named Dr. Al Garza, who I've had interactions on chatting or whatever, not in person or anything, or on the phone or anything. But anyways, Dr. Antonios was critiquing that video, and kind of the conclusion I've come to regarding the grammar of, with my limited understanding, but hearing what experts have to say about it. My conclusion is that it's not conclusive to argue that the Hebrew grammar must demand that verse 927 in Daniel 9 is the Messiah. And there's all sorts of in the King James, and depending on what version of how it's rendered in the English you think is right. I think the King James is correct, not like some of the constructions of the way they split up the weeks. It's complicated, but I want to just show what I think is going on in Daniel 9 in the English here. And so I made a chart just to help show what I'm saying. And it's kind of maybe complicated and maybe only I can understand it, but I want to just show this case of what I'm saying about it, or what I think it is saying. So here's Daniel 9, the prophecy, verse 24 through 27. So I'm highlighting it here to start with to kind of get the point here, to show that there's 70 weeks as the time span that these 6 things in red must happen. So 70 weeks are determined upon thy people and upon thy holy city to finish the transgression, make an end of sins, to make reconciliation for iniquity or atonement for iniquity. Kippur is the word. And to bring almost everyone, I believe, agrees that that's Jesus' sacrifice for sins, salvation, right? To bring in everlasting righteousness and to seal up the vision and prophecy and to anoint the most holy. 6 things have been determined upon Jerusalem and the people. So these 6 things are to be determined within this time period. You could translate this determined as cut off, set aside, allotted. This is the opening claim of this prophecy, its purpose. And God has set a time limit, 70 weeks. This is why, everyone suggests these things have to happen in the 70 weeks, right? Notice, first comment I'll make is this. So we have a time limit given, and when the clock starts, we could say that's the decree or the word, okay, to restore and rebuild. So notice, then I put the 7 weeks, the 62 weeks, and the 1 week in green, but they're still part of the 70 weeks. So the green is the 70 weeks, right? So the green is within the yellow because the yellow is the 70 weeks. So the green is just the splitting up of the 70 weeks. So the green is still part of the yellow, right? Okay, so that's the idea of the color. And the 6 things have to happen inside the green / the yellow, right? As demonstrated by this part of the chart. 70 weeks are split up, still part of the 70 weeks, right? And the red are the 6 things listed in red that must happen within the green and yellow. Number 3 being Jesus' death. I think we can agree on that. Okay, that's the point of the color, from the text to the visualization of it. 70 weeks are yellow. The red things have to happen in the 70 weeks, one of which being Jesus' death. Okay, so here's another way of looking at it. There's a decree, the timeline starts, which is the 70 weeks. 6 things have to occur in the 70 weeks because after all, they've been determined in a time limit and a constraint. So here's the question. Verse 26, after 62 weeks, Messiah was cut off, but not for himself, because this is the explanation, which is the number 3, right? Jesus' death. The 7 comes before the 62, and it's after 62. So the 7 has occurred. There's the decree. The 7 happens, the 62, and then after the 62, Messiah is cut off, which is number 3. So if 7 and 62 have passed, because it's after, Messiah is cut off. Okay, but remember, the 6 things have to happen within the 70 weeks. So there's only 1 week left after the 62 is over. Again, after 7 comes, 62 next. So this doesn't matter if you put gaps or not. It's not an argument. I'm not arguing either way in this case. But we do know that it says after he's cut off, and that's Jesus' death, number 3. So here's the point. 70 weeks are determined for Daniel's people. He's either, if you make a gap between the 69th and the 70th week, okay, then Jesus died outside of the 70 weeks. So Jesus either died in the last week, that they're the only week that's left, or he died in the week. So here's the question. Did Jesus' death bring salvation in the allotted time period according to the text? Did Jesus die according to the scriptures? God has determined 70 weeks for Israel and the people. Did Jesus die in the prophecy according to the scriptures? Paul says this is the gospel, that Christ died for Paul is a Jew. He's a Hebrew person. He's a first covenant people of God, a son of Abraham. Did Jesus die for us, Paul says, according to the scriptures, that he died and was buried and rose again? Because the prophecy says 70 weeks are determined. Making atonement for iniquity is what Jesus did. Did he do it in the 70 weeks or not? If you put the gap in there, and the text says he dies after 62 weeks. So either died in the gap or he died in the 70th week. I say he died in the 70th week because he's the Messiah of the Jew first, then to the Greek. And of course, this is why I'm not a dispensationalist, because I think Jesus brought salvation to Israel in the first century according to the prophecy. If you put his death in the gap, he fails the prophecy, and he therefore would fail to qualify for 1 Corinthians 15. Because if this prophecy is accurate, and Jesus is the savior to the Jew first, how can you put his death in a gap? I don't think there are gaps. I think they're split up for counting purposes according to the Jubilee cycle. It's 10 Jubilees, and the last sabbatical cycle or Shemitah of the 10th Jubilee is when Jesus shows up. Halfway through the last week of the last Jubilee, he's cut off. And that ends up bringing in reconciliation for iniquity and ratifying the covenant and bringing the new covenant. And then again, this is why I say, to me, replacement theology is dispensationalism, because it says that Jesus started a new thing. But the thing they say is the church, which is a new thing, in a parentheses, is actually the fulfillment of biblical prophecy to the Jew first, which is bringing the new covenant promised to the Jew, to the house of Israel and the house of Judah. And then the Gentiles are grafted in per Romans 9 through 11. And this is why I'm a Seventh-day Adventist, because the law of God is something he has had since the beginning. It was a sin always, and he established the Sabbath at the beginning for man. And of course, that defines what sin is and what Jesus is saving the whole world from when he calls back all the nations through Jesus, the savior of Israel in the first century, according to the text.